Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for dialing in. My name is Ben Heyman, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president of the Volunteer Law Enforcement Officer Alliance. But tonight, more privileged to be a friend of Ian Britton and to join this convening and to hear and listen to some of the important work that Ian has been doing to advance the profession of volunteer policing. I myself have been a volunteer police officer in Washington, D.C. Over the past 15 years. It's been a tremendous experience. And alike to many of you and many of the folks that are listening in, understand the impact that volunteers around the world can make. Dr. Britton has been exploring a variety of different areas of volunteer policing. And today, the webinar is really a unique opportunity to look at the training and some of the different components that go into a successful volunteer program. I can say from my own experience, both being an academy instructor, having gone through a full police academy, and having looked at different models of police training, both nationally and internationally, what I can say is there is not one single solution to this, but there's a lot of different practices and approaches, and each of those fits a particular need in a particular community. So I'm really excited to hear from the panelists today and the insights and wisdom that they will share, and more so to continue to follow Dr. Britton's research and work into volunteer policing. Just to all that have dialed in tonight and today, thank you so much for listening in. And hopefully you have some questions and thoughts, and a copy of today's recording will be available and distributed to all that weren't able to make it. And this will become a shared resource for many agencies. Ian, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it to you.
Thank you, Ben. Well, welcome to what's now our second webinar for VLEOA, looking at different areas of professional practice across volunteer policing. As Ben reflects, there isn't one version of the truth about what content or what model of volunteer police training we should have. Obviously, our volunteer models are massively different in different countries and different agencies. Some of us have volunteer models where the volunteers are effectively entirely mirroring the service and responsibilities and equipment and everything else of full-time paid service police officers, and some are of a more assistant or auxiliary type nature, and some are more broadly supportive of policing across the community. And the training programs around those models will all be different. But what I'm really excited that we've gathered together this evening is a great panel of people who in different ways are delivering some excitingly new ways of looking at volunteer training. So we have Ding Salmon from the Peel Regional Police in Canada, who's going to talk about their training team and the auxiliary and the various models they have for both developing their auxiliaries and then the ongoing professional support and development of them through their careers. We have also from Canada Auxiliary Inspector Jim Drake from the Ontario Provincial Police, who some of you who were at the VLEOA conference will know that they have some really good new models of auxiliaries, training auxiliaries for auxiliaries, and have really started to reimagine that way of how you resource training. And we have the Chief Officer of the Volunteer Special Constabulary in South Yorkshire, Craig Batham, joining us, who will talk both about some of the innovations he's been involved with for the initial training of special constables in the UK, and also a little bit about our leadership training models for our volunteer leadership in policing. So I'm going to begin. I'm going to talk just a couple of quick slides giving an overall picture of this, and then I will hand in turn to each of our panelists to talk for a few minutes, and we're aiming to have plenty of time for a discussion at the end of the session. So hopefully that screen sharing has worked reasonably well. So in terms of this picture, as I say, there are lots of differences across us internationally, but I think the essence of this is that there are some key shared challenges which we all have, or many of us have. The first one of those is around the resourcing of training. So when you look across volunteer police models around the world, one of the real challenges is just that there are competing demands on agency trainers to be training other groups of staff. There are limits in the resources available to fund cohorts through initial training, and that leads to a limitation of us being able to onboard new people into volunteer police. There are some really, I think, quite significant debates about just how much and how best to align what we train our volunteer police and our paid service police. Do we seek to directly model that and mirror it, or do we seek to create something more bespoke for those part-time volunteers, but which gets to the same endpoint? And I think there are some interesting innovations internationally around that kind of point. One of the big challenges we have, and particularly for those roles which many of us have, where volunteer police are full powers and essentially reflecting the paid service responsibilities and role, is just the flexibility and accessibility of training. That part-time volunteers have busy lives, and often our initial training programs are huge in their requirement, and they are quite inflexible. The come every Saturday and every Wednesday evening for the next 9 months type picture in some cases is quite limiting in terms of who's able to participate. So there's some need to think about how we can flex and deliver training to be more flexible and accessible. I think a lot of our volunteer programs have struggled in the past to deliver an ongoing and structured model of training once volunteers are in position, and particularly to have thought through developmental pathways. And Menace Craig in particular will reflect for us later this evening, or later this afternoon for some of you, how to support and develop our volunteer leaders. So just a quick 2 minutes looking at some research we've undertaken in the UK, which possibly is the only detailed academic look that's been done specifically around the training experience of volunteer police. So when we interviewed and surveyed our volunteer special constables, a lot of what they were looking for was training which pivoted from being too much classroom and too much sort of learning content to being more practical and scenario based and directly matching to the sort of things that they would experience out on patrol, out on the front line, actively policing. They wish to have an improved tutoring and field training stage where there was much more of a purpose of structure of developing them from that classroom period to being fully operational and competent. They wanted a more managed approach to that initial practice phase as well. So a, a better induction to team and colleagues, and also a management of what they were being exposed to in the very early shifts, and making sure that that was safe and that that was a sort of good, positive initial journey into being in volunteer police. They wanted greater flexibility, so there was a sense sometimes of a real rigidity that if you miss one Saturday, you're off the course and need to wait for the next one. They did want to for things to be thought about a little bit differently than just trying to directly mimic what regular officer, what our paid service officer training looked like, which was often built into full day training sessions designed around paid personnel being there, being paid for the day. And when you looked at the volunteer officers, they felt that training could be delivered in different ways, possibly more quickly, possibly in more of a hybrid online and in-person fashion, and just looked at differently to fit part-time volunteers. There was a lot of emphasis on getting beyond just that, becoming competent, covering the legal content, to also becoming a police officer, becoming a member of a police service, and giving space within the training to be able to develop that persona, that craft of being a police officer, and also of belonging, again, that interlinkage with colleagues and belonging into the community of the organization, and making sure that our training isn't just covering the bases in terms of content, but effectively is also culturally welcoming and an effective onboarding for volunteers that we hope to remain over the long term. And there was a lot of reflection about, particularly for ongoing serving volunteer police, of the ever expanding training requirement that our policing agencies tend to identify more and more things that people need to train in. And for part-time volunteer officers, that was quite difficult to keep up with. So that's a broad overview of the, as I say, the UK research, and I guess just an introduction to what we're going to be looking at this evening. But I'm now delighted to start passing over to our practical contributors who are all in their different ways directly involved in this within agencies, and I think will be able to provide us with some really interesting insight. So firstly, Ding, if we could go over to you and you could just share for a few minutes the picture in Peel Regional Police and how you go about that sort of training, development, support roles around your auxiliary.
Hi, thanks everybody. I hope you can all hear me. I'm Constable Dean Salmon with the Peel Regional Police. Myself and my sergeant are in charge of the Auxiliary Bureau with Peel Regional Police. We have almost 100 active members. As we know, not everybody is always active. So in order to have everyone's interest, we do focus largely on the training. And I don't want to make this conversation too long, so I just dive right into it. So we have 14 serving auxiliary members that's in the training team right now. And they take care of attendance, progress monitoring for course completions, and daily training facilitations. They will teach certain components of the training, such as a thing we call it Auxiliary Connect, is an online-based hub where all the communications go out from the office to all the individuals in the program. And that's where they also go sign up for duties. And that's how they can view the schedule and sign up the duties that's required for them to complete their hours. And the office has the opportunity to go in and post events and the duties for them to sign up as well. And I want to emphasize something for our fitness support team that's within the auxiliary program. They are all members of the auxiliary officers. They assist us from recruiting to training, as well as the annual evaluation of all the fitness required tasks. And in with the Pure Regional Police, all the officers are required to complete the Ontario Police Fitness Award, which we also call it the pin test, because at the end of the day, you get a little metal pin to show that you've completed the test this year. For all the new recruits that will come in, the fitness team will be responsible to test them at the beginning and the completion or graduation of the program. They have to graduate with passing of the pin at 65%. And that test consists of push-ups, sit and reach, back extensions, and a shuttle run, which is also the beep test with a 65% scoring that's evaluated based on the age and the gender basis. So if you are a 20-year-old applicant, it's much harder to pass the test than versus a 55-year-old applicant. But all the standards are all pretty much the same for all the applicants. So with the fitness team, they will help us to run 3 to 4 fitness tests for new applicants. Each test will have about 30 to 60 new applicants coming in to do the test. Once they pass the fitness pin, then they're moving on to the next stages of the application program. And the fitness and the fitness teams also take care of the annual pin test. It's encouraged and not mandatory for all members to complete the pin test annually, and you do get the pin to show that you are fit for duty. So that's with our fitness team. And we do have a new class starting in January. The class runs for 9 weeks. I think in your, Dr. Breton, in your presentation, you mentioned for some of the services, the people find it's too big of a commitment right from the get-go, and it's taking a lot of times, and people are just cannot complete the training to even get started with the duty. So this year, what we did is we shortened the training into 9 weeks. Pretty much every single time people attend the training, it's a scenario or hands-on based training. So we've moved a large portion of our slides or any basic knowledge kind of training into the online portion. And we find most people when they attend class, and it's hard to concentrate at the end of the day going to school or after working, to come and sit down again and listen to another lecture. So we moved that onto online training. So all the new members will have roughly a month to complete the online portion. After each presentation, there is a little quiz associated with the material that we covered, and all of those material will be applicable to all the hands-on training throughout the 9 weeks. So throughout the 9 weeks, we covered topics such as radio communication and the cruiser etiquette. That is to prepare them for patrol escort duties, prisoner escort duties, as long as like marine escort and bike escort. That's going to be coming up later on in the year. And also talk about healthy lifestyle and being fit for duty. We actually take them to go through traffic directions and our RIDE program, which is where they apprehend the impaired drivers. They are trained on body-worn camera awareness, how to take notes properly, and how to prepare for court. There's a large portion that's also designated to drill practice. That's to prepare the recruits for any ceremonial duties in the future. From the initial training, we have 4 days, 4 full days of use of force training. Within the use of training, they'll go through firearms and defensive tactics, just like all regular officers. It's just not as long, it's a more condensed version, so they get the taste of a little bit of everything. And then there's one thing which I'm really proud to introduce that's going to be incorporated with this new group is the virtual reality scenario training. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then this one in particular, the course there will be delivered is autism related training. So in terms of ongoing training, for existing members, once they're all hired and started their duties, they will have the annual fitness test. They have the annual use of force requalification, which is absolutely mandatory. And they will have new training, as I mentioned, with the virtual reality. So I'm sure everyone's seen something like this, like right with video games, but we've adapted this and put scenarios into it. So you have this on, you'll be put into a situation that's very lifelike of what you could potentially be dealing with. So we have this in 2 separate kind of approach. One is empathy-based intervention. We have courses under this approach, such as mental health related like autism, Alzheimer's, and schizophrenia, and a crisis de-escalation, domestic violence, English as a second language, or officers in crisis, such as officers possibly going through a mental health episode and committing suicide or substance abuse. And then the other component, the other approach we have is any conflict de-escalation, including use of force options. So officers will be putting the scenario. If it's a shoot scenario, you will be kitted with the replica, and you'll shoot or deploy a taser or whatever as necessary based on what's presented. So those courses, we have combative subject, conflict management, domestic violence, and even traffic stop scenarios. So that's all going to be implemented into the new training class. So with the existing members, we are going to start registering them for such courses so they can all run through the scenario. This makes everything much more interesting, interactive, and you retain information much, much better. I actually have done the Alzheimer training this morning myself. I see things in different perspective and that I never thought I would be able to experience just by listening to a lecture or going through a traditional user force scenario. So that's something we're very, very proud of. We're really hoping to make it more useful for wider range of trainings, not just for auxiliary. And then there are future training programs and they're in the works. It's like a bicycle unit. We do have a bike officers in the summer go to parks and schools to interact with the community. We're hoping to get those bikes for our auxiliaries as well. It's just another avenue, another way for them to volunteer their time. And we also have the marine unit. Officers can go onto the boats with officers to patrol Lake Ontario in our region. And the very new thing that's going to start in January, it's called a non-auxiliary volunteer program. So they're managed under the auxiliary umbrella, but they don't go through the auxiliary training and they don't get fitted for uniform in a way that the auxiliary officer would. Most of them, as of now, are university students who are going through justice studies or police foundation programs. And the main purpose from the service perspective is for them to fill in the gaps of some of the business hours duties that our auxiliary officers cannot fulfill. So they can come in. We've worked with the school. So some of them will actually be using their class time as a part of their credit to come and fulfill their hours. So this will give the service more of a support as we're not getting right now. So let's see how that goes. That could potentially be extended to community members if it all goes well. So that's the rough outline of kind of what we're doing with the Peel Regional Police right now. I'm going to pass it back to you, Dr. Brighton. Thank you very much for your time.
There was always going to be someone who was going to forget to unmute, and it was me. So no, thank you. Thank you very much. We decided at the beginning of the webinar that we were going to have everyone speak, and then we'll have a discussion and conversation at the end. There are definitely a couple of things in my mind that I'm really interested to hear a little bit more. Some really innovative ideas being talked about there. So no, thank you very much. And next on to Jim Drake from Ontario Provincial Police, who is going to share with us their picture. And I will, as I'm speaking, Jim, I shall get your slides up. Can you see those okay, Jim?
I can, but you're showing your screen, not the display screen. So all my notes will be showing up, and then I'll just be embarrassed by all the stuff that I miss when I'm speaking. Because Ben started the conversation off by saying that we're going to share our wisdom. Well, I'll share my experience. I don't know how much wisdom there is to provide there. We go to the next slide. Easier if I just share.
Has the next slide not come up?
No, we're still looking at the PowerPoint, not the actual presentation.
It may be easier if you just share, Jim. I'll take the slides down.
Easier said than done, I think. How's that?
Yep, we can see the first slide.
Okay. So just very briefly, if I can get it to change, we'll talk about the, sorry, it got ahead of me. There's two elements to our training: recruit basic training 9 days and monthly unit training, which is essentially a unit meeting and normally is 3 hours per meeting. We also have some training that occurs with our in-service training unit, but I'm not including that as part of our presentation today. They're doing a modernization of the auxiliary program, and what it's allowed us to do is to have more input on what is being presented and how it's being presented. And it was discovered that everything that we were currently presenting was based on the same material that was presented to the regular members. As an example, the naloxone training included a detailed segment on logging of evidence, which is not something that an auxiliary member would do. And it increased the length of time required to do the naloxone presentation, which is time that we didn't have to spare. And then we also discovered that the unit monthly training was sporadic, and oftentimes it wasn't being done. It was a lot of time where they were just sitting around talking about their latest ride along, which again was a waste of volunteers' time. So we wanted to do something that was better. So we wanted to achieve the training objectives while keeping members interested. Of course, we're volunteers. We have to have a reason why we're there, and just being there is not the reason why we're there. So we wanted to have material that was going to keep them interested. And again, because what was being presented was the same as the regular members, we wanted to create centric material. And in doing so, we created the model auxiliary by auxiliary for auxiliary. It's very important to us as we go forward that we keep that in mind in everything that we did. So steps involved in achieving that goal was to develop a certification program for auxiliary instructors. The problem that we had with the Provincial Police Academy is they were looking at everybody as a police officer who has no experience other than what they've done as a police officer. And we tried to get them to recognize the fact that we have members that are actual teachers. They're certified teachers with the provincial education program. And they weren't recognizing that. And they were asking that if we were going to have an instructor, that instructor would have to take a 1-week course at headquarters to be certified as an instructor, regardless of their actual life experience. So we wanted to have some kind of a program developed which would be more considerate of our volunteers' time and do it on weekends instead of Monday to Friday. So we're working with them. And we're also working with the in-service training people and the Provincial Police Academy to develop the material again, to give us a syllabus that will allow us to become more involved in the recruit class and instructing. Prior to this change, we were just doing whatever we were told to do. So in developing it, we've now got the program office, which is our governing body per se. They're tasked with scripting and all the visual elements that are necessary to present. And we wanted to challenge all of our members to present ideas and elements that they would like to receive training on. So our current results, we had 2 members attend for logistics purpose. Now we have a team of auxiliaries instructors that are there for the entire 9 days of the recruit class. And we've taken the existing material. We haven't necessarily changed it, but where we could make changes, we have. And we reimagined it to show auxiliary members, not regular members. And we are working on new modules, and they're being developed that reflect more accurately the role of auxiliary member. And that includes things like traffic, where we're not normally the ones that are going to be controlling the intersection by ourselves. We're there to assist. So we need to have instructions on how better to assist the members. On the unit level training side, we developed a calendar that created the 4 key elements of training on a monthly basis. We want to remind them to review the standard operating procedures on a monthly basis, pick different elements to make sure that they're aware. We create a specific module that we send out on a monthly basis that we want them to use in their monthly meeting to train. We want to also have a module from the recruit class, because when I first got involved in this, I had 18 years on, and I took all of this recruit training 18 years prior, and there was never a refresher on all the stuff that we took. So we wanted to include that, but we also wanted to allow them the opportunity to have an independent choice so that they could present something if they've got somebody in their detachment that is more familiar with ERT, which is the emergency response team, or one of the any other various parts of the program. Parts of the OPP that we could get them involved in. We're looking to increase our training cadre. When you're talking, we're volunteers and we're talking 9 days in recruit class, we need to have more people available to augment the existing people. We can't have the same people doing those 3 yearly classes. We need to get more people involved. We want to build on our subject matter expertise. We are auxiliary subject matter experts. We need to keep that being reinforced with the management team. And we want to capitalize on the varied member skill test set so that we can take a person that's got an outside skill that we can use within our program. Let's get our people trained on it so that they can be better. We're doing a lot more online. We've all of our members now have access to CPKN, which is the Canadian Police Knowledge Network. So they can go in, they can take online courses and material that is of interest to them. So general interest stuff, as well as more specific training. And we're trying to develop more scenario-based training, going back to at the recruit level and in the unit level, to have those scenarios go out and have them practice what we preach. We're in the right direction. We're looking forward to continued improvement, and we just hope that they don't change our management team, who then decide they want to go in a different direction. But that's where we're at currently. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Jim. And yes, I think that whole philosophy of by the auxiliary, for the auxiliary, and that direct engagement of auxiliaries in what they want, what they need, what's the best way of doing this is such a strong message. I have seen in some agencies over the years where the training of volunteer police seems to be done without either particularly involving them either in what they want to need or how they experience it, or whether they may be able to deliver it. And there's a huge potential to deliver by volunteer police for volunteer police. So thank you very much for that input, and it neatly segues on to our final contributor of the session, Craig Batham, who as a volunteer police officer is very heavily involved around training and the development of training models for volunteer police. So Craig, do you want me to share your slides, or are you sharing your slides, or what's the best model? Oh, marvelous.
All sorted already. Evening, folks. To be fair, I think some of what I'm going to discuss is pretty much kind of Jim. Thank you. You've stolen my thunder. And I think this is it, particularly when you look at the volunteer world. For some extent, we are internationally sharing the same problems. And I mean, I'm going to talk to you about two things. Our kind of learning program, so our induction, but then also specifically our sergeants or our first line leaders program and what we've done. And again, some of it, being honest, is going to be very similar sentiment to kind of what others have replicated this evening. So way back in 2019, our regular force trainers decided to inform us that they were already working at 105% capacity. They couldn't train special constables anymore. So it was kind of a right, thank you very much, but you may as well wrap up. Luckily, we had a senior ranked member of the force regular exec team that kind of pushed it back and went, well, over to you then, what can you do? Luckily, and in again, similar to what Jim's already said, we had special constables within the force that were already teachers or were already trainers. So we established what the national minimum standard was. And in the UK, that's a level 4 in education and training. So we started pulling together which of our officers actually had those skills and what could they deliver. So rather than where the force were trying to take us, which was very much right, you must join this program and it must be Monday to Friday because we can't do any other way because of training requirements, we started putting together a course that we could continue to deliver ourselves over evenings and weekends. So ours is currently 18 weeks, and that fulfills all the requirements of the national curriculum that we have to work to in terms of the learning program from our College of Policing. Delivered over every Tuesday, Wednesday, and then every other Saturday, Sunday. Again, some of that is classroom input, but we're currently looking at how to take that online. And IT provision is one of our challenges in regards to that at the minute. So it's been interesting to hear some of the different options this evening. We've also predominantly covered about 90% of the curriculum by ourselves. And what we've found is we've got special constables that are trained with the greatest respect to a higher level. So some have already got teaching qualifications, etc., that far outstrip our regular trainers. But what we've also got is our currency. So when we've had some of our new student officers attend training school and they've been taught arrest procedures or anything else, when they've challenged their trainers to, so when was the last time you conducted an arrest? The actual line's been, well, it's Tuesday, so my last arrest was Saturday. Whereas do that with some of our regular colleagues, and there's a good chance that their last arrest was potentially 10, 12, 13 years ago. So it gives us currency as a team that our trainers are also encouraged to continue to do their operational duties as well. We still pull in our subject matter experts. So our force intelligence team, our detective element, we still utilize police personal safety trainers for our 9-day personal safety course, just because the more the CPD requirements that make it almost unachievable for special constables to do it. When we've not got people that have got suitable training qualifications from external, then what we've actually done is we've encouraged the force to then support that by bolstering those officers and effectively putting them through a level 4 qualification in training already. So it's also bringing about some of our SCs gaining additional skills, not just a case of a bit of a tick in a box. We utilize a range of assessments. So there's knowledge checks, there's practical based assessments. We have a building called LifeWise Centre. It's effectively a warehouse, and we've got a full-blown set in the warehouse. So we've got bedrooms, we've got a kitchen, we've got a park, an A&E department, we've got a full-blown custody suite. So we can push our volunteers effectively onto stage, and it's about as lifelike as we can make it without letting them loose on real public, and pressuring, kind of almost pressure testing all their radio skills, their use of force, before we let them loose on budding members of the public. We continue to run that in terms of national curriculum. So we do a national curriculum update every September, but then every January, we also do a full internal audit of it, just to ensure that it's compliant. And again, is there stuff that we need to refresh? Is there policies or procedures to update? And as well, as others have said, it's about looking at, we know we can't fulfill the entire role of our regular colleagues because time just does not allow. So where we can, we bring in condensed versions. Where we've looked at time constraints and what our special constables are actually expected to do in terms of role profiles and force expectation, we've removed some elements, but what it's allowed us to do is really capitalize on some of the skills that we actually need to test or we need officers to ensure that they're compliant with. So our learning program now has been delivered by us for coming up to almost 7 years. And again, we continue to develop it. We continue to bring in new trainers. And it's actually brought us dividends in terms of the feedback we've got from the lived experience of our trainers that is still current and valid. So I move on from our learning program into kind of where we sit within leadership. And what I've tried to do is, I'm very cognizant of time, so I've tried to keep the bullet points, as I could discuss pretty much like most these subjects for a whole range of hours. Way back when I moved from one of our basic command units into another, realized that a lot of our volunteer leaders were effectively in positions because of best mate syndrome, dead man's boots, and a lot of the leadership training was mostly conversant on can you pass a sergeant's exam and can you pass the exam because therefore you're a sergeant in regular world. There were some legal constraints to that around the certification, etc. And effectively, as volunteers, we weren't allowed to take the sergeant's exam because we wouldn't enact that within a legislative situation. So my background is all kind of leadership and management, and assessing vocational qualifications in leadership and management. And strangely enough, my current day job is as a senior lecturer in policing at our local university, delivering initial training for a lot of our degree apprenticeship students within the policing world. So as I moved BCUs and realized that our sergeants had got very little input in terms of leadership training, myself and a colleague began developing a training course for our sergeants. It's currently a 3-day course. So we teach our first day around coaching and mentoring. They then have a month that is all about a month's worth of kind of input to do, reflections. So our day 2 is around fundamentals of leadership. So we strip it back to things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, action-centered leadership, McGregor's X and Y. We talk about policing culture, etc. And then our part 3 is all about welfare and well-being of volunteers, and also well-being as supervisors, considering that the role of a special sergeant or a first-line leader within kind of volunteer policing is probably the most paramount grade. Even ignore mine as chief officer. If I do my role well, I only have to manage 5 people. Our special sergeants as our first line leaders are managing 9. So the training is delivered over the 3 days or 3 months to give a bit of space, again, acknowledging we're volunteers. It's delivered by members of the Special Constabulary Management Team, and it's usually by those of us that have got management experience external to policing as well as internal. I deliver it as chief officer, one, because I'm a bit of a control freak and I wrote the course, but the other one is as well, it's kind of my way of investing in our first line leaders. So if I'm stood there as chief officer, they know exactly what the expectations are direct from the horse's mouth. They know what support's available to them and they know what they should be doing in that role. Again, all of our trainers should have a level 4 in education and training or higher. So whether they're actually qualified teachers or anything else, we utilize their skills. We ask them to have, if they're training it, and at the minute there's 3 of us that are looking to deliver that, they've got to have management experience in both paid roles and within our special constabulary or some sort of volunteer. So again, it's building on that currency and validity. And I say that because as probably everybody on this call will acknowledge, when you are dealing with auxiliary or volunteer staff, you are using motivation to kind of empower them. You're not using pay. And it's more inexperience, having managed multi-million-pound contracts, etc. It is far more difficult to manage volunteers than it is to manage paid staff. So it's an acknowledgement of that. We deliver our courses when we need it. So we look at what demand we've got. We look at as people achieve our DPS, our Director Patrol status. And that's our only qualifying criteria. As soon as people have basically gone out to our command units, they've spent some time, they've achieved their portfolio that says we can leave you effectively independent, they are then eligible to attend the sergeant's course. And the reason we do that is, 1, it brings on our resilience and our succession planning. But 2, for some of them that think they know what it is to be a sergeant or they've got the skills, we have had some where it's almost detracted them from doing it because they've realized just how much is actually involved. We focus on volunteer management. When we've taken it to our force leadership and development team, their line has been, we've got people with the management qualifications, but we've got nobody that can actually meet the lived experience of management in various different settings. And again, we continue to develop it. It currently sits within the College of Policing's First Line Leaders Programme curriculum. So we maintain it as a national standard. And we've been updating it for, 13 years at the minute. And again, we continue to give feedback on it. But any of our officers attending have to attend that before they can even start acting up as temporary. So what it means is that instead of putting people in leadership positions and giving them no training, no expectations, and expecting them to actually succeed in the role, we do it the other way. We outline the expectations and we give them the training first. Then if they hit that position, we then put mentors in, etc. And what it allows us to do is, if people aren't operating to the level they need, if we've put suitable development in and suitable parameters, then effectively we can almost demote them out of that volunteer position as well. So it means that our leadership, and they're tried and tested not just in a classroom, but they've also got a portfolio to complete of evidence from looking at police culture, looking at some of the online elements that our College of Policing provide, similar to what others have said. But they've also then got to go out and they've got to take control of an event. They've got to take control of a serial or a van of officers, usually 1 and 7 or 1 and 8. on an operational shift or an operational duty or during an operation, they've got to show us that they can work as an operational sergeant under the support of a regular sergeant that will effectively take kind of legal ownership. So it continues to develop. Moving into next year, we're looking at more courses. We're looking at opening it out to our local colleagues. And again, this then develops into our special inspectors program. So our kind of mid-level. So we've developed our leaders just as much as our volunteers to make sure that we've got that professionalism throughout. That's everything from me, Ian. So back over to yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Craig. And I think that last section is really interesting as well, looking at the wider sense of, as part of a developmental journey for volunteers, what does the leadership developmental journey look like? And may come back as part of our discussion to ask Jim and Ding about the picture in their context of what support or development particularly focused on leadership. I believe that the platform we're on Zoom here isn't necessarily the most interactive one on earth for that sense of having a group discussion amongst everybody attending, in the sense that I'm told I haven't really got a button to press to allow people to talk or whatever, but I do believe that there is a Q&A function where people can type in things and then we can pick it up and put it into the conversation. So hopefully if someone could try that, we could fire up and have some level of debate from attendees as well as just ourselves as panelists. If anyone does have any particular questions to ask the people we've gathered together here today. I suppose perhaps if I were to ask, in terms of Peel and in terms of OPP, is there any sort of structured support or development model around those auxiliaries who grow into leadership roles in terms of their volunteer colleagues?
I can offer from our perspective, it's I'd like to say they are fully supported, but I can't say that. I do know that we've often talked about their roles and how we can support them, but I'd be really interested in Craig's approach on what kind of supports they are and what kind of training they are offering their management.
Hi, as Ding Samuel PO. So it's very interesting that you just touched on. So our leaders within the auxiliary team should have the proper training. We are running into the same issues over and over, but more recently, I find a lot of issues is not about their abilities to manage for daily tasks. They do an excellent job managing everyone's schedules and timesheets, and when people are registering or canceling for events, those are all done well. But when it comes to managing personnel in terms of different personalities or having the difficult conversations, I do find some of our supervisors within the auxiliary roles having difficulty navigating that. And that's one thing I think I forgot to mention earlier. My sergeant has mentioned, because with Pure Regional Police, for uniform officers, in order to be considered for a promotional process, they have to very first course they take is a frontline supervisor course. You have to take this course to be eligible to even apply to move on to promotion. So we're talking about implementing this course to now our existing management team within the auxiliary team, have them finish the course and then extend it to any members who are interested in getting to a management position within auxiliary as well. And then now it's a little late for us to say demote everybody to a constable position and then start over. So we just have to backpedal a little bit and do step by step. But going forward, that definitely would be important. Just even
how to talk to the people that you are managing, and how to address their personal issues. Because a lot of it is going to be personal versus volunteering. It's not just work related as a paid uniform officer would face. So that is definitely a great point, and I really appreciate you sharing that.
No, thank you both. Another point which I mentioned in the sort of introducing of the discussion was the issue around how you keep people engaged and what you do when people find it hard to engage during, I think one of the challenges for volunteer policing is we have quite a lot of training we need to deliver to people who are part-time volunteers with busy lives, and particularly as lots of agencies aim to shift who's engaged within the programs, looking at perhaps different demographics, perhaps people slightly later in life being attracted, perhaps more women being attracted. It perhaps compounds some of those challenges. So I'd just be interested to hear from any or all of you of how do you go about keeping people engaged in training, and what you do when the inevitable things come along that people can't quite do everything you need them to? Is it a really rigid thing where if someone can't attend one session, they're off, or is it more creative how you support people through the process?
I think from our perspective, there's kind of two things: honesty and flexibility. Be it people joining us, be it people within the organization, as much as we can, we try and be honest with what are the requirements. And we're looking at now a range of new courses coming online for 2026. And part of it for us is not just explaining where we've kind of faltered in the past. Is we've told people what the requirement is to gain a particular skill, but then we've never actually told them what the ongoing CPD requirements are to maintain that skill. So we're now being very honest at the outset and going, this is how you obtain it, this is what you need to do to keep it, and this is how you then refresh it every year or whenever. And with our new officers joining us, as there's an 18-week training program, which is a big commitment. So one, it's the honesty with them from day one of this is what the training entails. But there's also, in our 18 weeks, because we've also got volunteers delivering it, we have our subject matter experts, as I say, our personal safety training team. They are effectively a non-negotiable. So we've got 9 sessions within our 18 weeks that are effectively, you must attend these. If not, you will either get back-coursed, or there's options there for them to join our regular colleagues during a normal working day. Or we can then try and filter them in later on down the line so they can complete the course. But if they're missing a particular day, then they may have to pick that up with the following one. Apologies, somebody near me has just decided to start taking fireworks off. So I think part of it is having that flexibility around, yes, you are volunteers, but also having the honesty to say, now, you've got to attend this because we're in a heavily scrutinized organization. Hopefully you caught that last bit.
Yeah.
I'd like to respond if it's okay. And Richard Sparks had asked the question about any issues with the teachers that teach full-time coming in and teaching our people. I have to say that there are some that are not at all interested in continuing to educate our members, but we have some that are excited to share their auxiliary knowledge with other auxiliaries. So some yes, some not so much.
Yeah, and I think that's been my experience researching around lots of different agencies around volunteer police as a whole. There are some people who wish to bring their cyber expertise or their financial expertise to the policing. There are other people for whom the policing is the wonderful escape from what they do in cyber or finance, and the last thing in the world they want to do is to do that here as well. And you're right, I think it's very much the same, isn't it, for people who are delivering kind of teaching, educational type professional roles. I suppose one of the advantages you have is that it's a very different context and very different nature, probably for many people than what they're doing in another sort of paid professional educational context, isn't it? But I think again that's one of the reasons not to be one size fits all with all of this. There will be some auxiliaries who will love to bring that skill set from outside in. There will be others who will very much not wish to do it. So it very much varies between, doesn't it?
I'd like to say that our best experience has been with kindergarten teachers, but I'd be making a joke. Sorry.
Sorry, if I may add in terms of like the ongoing training. So our class that graduated earlier this year, some of the members were graduated professionals, and they were CEOs and running all kinds of large organizations and lived throughout the world. The one big comment we got, and I really appreciate it, was we have world-class training. It's like you mentioned earlier, Dr. Brett, it's very, very different from what they do every day through their whole lives. And now they just want to do something that's not every day and to keep things interesting. So if we can keep offering things that's just different, they would participate. And then another thing to piggyback on what Craig was saying earlier, it's just how do we keep them coming back? So what we do in PO, which actually does create a more administrative side of the work, but I feel like it's worth it. We, other than user force training, the annual requalification is mandatory. Everything else, we don't make it a must-have. We encourage them to attend, and we register them for the sessions, and we make it available, and they register so we can run these courses. But based on the kind of courses they take, they are now qualified for different things, such as if they're qualified for the Marine unit because they took the swimming course, right? Then they can do that kind of duties. Or they're qualified for the bike unit, or they're qualified for we have the canvassing for homicide and special victims services and all of that. If they're qualified for that, there's more variety of things they can do and make their lives more interesting. But if it's someone who's happy just go on ride-alongs or just go to community events and hand out flyers, that's up to them. But if you're interested in expanding their scope of duties they can attend to, which would be easier for them to complete their hours on an annual basis, they can attend those meetings and attend those trainings so they can do all those things that other people can't do. So, but now, having said the administrative part, now we keep a list of who's attended what. When people sign up for certain duties, we have to have someone check if they're qualified to attend those duties. So I don't know if that might have.
That does make sense. It touches a little bit on one of the comments we've had in the chat as well from Chris, who's kind of saying that sometimes for longer serving volunteers, there can be a sense that new requirements come along, certification standards can sometimes catch people off guard. And a sort of linked point, I think, which is always a challenge in policing, of whether existing volunteers are recognised for the sort of a learning and expertise from elsewhere and potentially from outside of policing. So that sense, I guess that we just need to be very aware, as people have long service careers in volunteer policing, that, and as inevitably agencies change and expectations change, we need to be respectful and understanding of volunteer colleagues who are part-time, who are doing this around all of the rest of life, in terms of helping them keep up, but also being sensitive around all of that.
I think there's two bits to that. Sorry, just very, very, very quickly. One is it's about, and we've done it recently with some bits. It's about using the CPD or the unit meetings, as has been mentioned.
Yes.
We've upskilled a lot of our long-standing officers by using CPD sessions in quite a structured way to do so. And the other one, to kind of take on Ding's bit, when we introduced our sergeants course, we'd got a number of long-standing sergeants. And then all of a sudden we were effectively saying, you're not qualified to be a sergeant anymore. So what we did was we kind of, for our long-standing sergeants, understanding that they're volunteers, we basically gave them 18 months to attend the course and said, look, we understand where you are. We understand some of the bits you've done. We want you to attend because it will upskill you in terms of the new expectations, etc. If you've not attended a course within 18 months, we'll take it that you no longer want to host that rank. And actually, being honest, out of about 18 people, we only had one person that chose that they didn't want to do it anymore. And they'd attended the course, but they decided that the new expectations placed on them were over and above what they'd done. And they were probably one of those that we didn't want to keep anyway. But again, I think it goes back to, you've got to be honest with the staff that you've got. We know policing internationally is heavily scrutinised at the minute. And if we want to keep the volunteers, we need to be honest with them about the changes that we want to implement and be realistic in terms of timescales.
No, thank you. Thank you
I
very
can
much.
just touch one more point
really quickly,
in regards to Chris, is just to say that we're using the scenario-based training to bring some of that previous training back to the forefront. So at least it's more interesting than just a PowerPoint talking about it.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
sense of practical training is huge in all of it, isn't it? Well, I'm conscious we're out of time. We promised people this would be an hour. So a huge thank you to our wonderful panelists, each of whom has been, to me, really informative. I've learned stuff from all of you that I didn't know, and it's been great to share. So thank you very much to Jim Drake and Ontario Provincial Police, to Dingsaman and Peel Regional Police, and to Craig Batham and South Yorkshire Police for the huge contributions. Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who's dialed in. This will be recorded, so it will be shared with the VLEOA members as a whole. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my favorite subject.
Thank you
You're
very
very
much
welcome.
for your time. Hopefully we'll have more opportunities to meet in the future.
Excellent. No, thank you all very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.